We are in Parashat Re'eh. We're going to learn a little bit from the Zera Shimshon. And in this week's parasha, there's a very famous verse that a lot of people like quoting, and needless to say, is a very powerful verse. The verse can be found in this week's parasha in chapter 14, verse 22. And the verse goes, Aser te'aser, one should give ma'aser, 10% of their earning. But the verse goes, Aser te'aser et kol tevuat zaracha. It's hard for me to pronounce the word in English. I think it's said tithe. Tithe. That's giving 10% of all your seeds and crops that the field gives you. And you have to do it year by year. Bechol shana v'shana. So this is where we learn that we have to give maaser on the crops and the seeds. And this is also where we derive to give 10% from our earning. And the Talmud explains aser te'aser is to give twice maaser, is that you give 20% of your earning. Needless to say, this is the key to success in Parnasah. Many people, when they come and ask me for what's the secret to making good Parnasah, is besides being honest and besides learning Torah and fulfilling the mitzvot and the basic things, and one of them is to give maaser. And if a person doesn't give maaser, then there's never going to be bracha in the money. And it's not only from money you make; it can come from many different options. But nevertheless, this is what it says in this week's parasha. Now, it says in the Midrash something very interesting. Aser te'aser, it quotes the verse in our parasha. Im zachitem, if you have the merit, sof she'atem yotzim lizroa, then you'll get to go back to the field and plant your seeds again. Lizroa hasadeh, v'im lav, if not, sof she'yotze hasadeh mitgareh bachem. The end is that the one that comes out of the field will come and provoke you. So this is the words of the Midrash talks. So just to explain it in a simple way, if you have the merit after you gave maaser, then you'll go back to the field, meaning you'll make more money. But if you don't, then the one that came out of the field, he will come and provoke you. So who's the one that came out of the field that will come to provoke me? Who's the one who came out of the field? Is Esav. Esav was a ish sadeh. He was a man of the field. Esav. How do we know it's Esav? Dichtiv, it says in the Torah, ish yodeh tzayid. Esav was a hunter, ish sadeh. He was a man of the field. Now comes a big question. Kashe, we have a question. Lama dafka be'avara zo itgareh. How come if I don't do this specific mitzvah, then I will arouse Esav to provoke me? Why not in any other thing? Specifically when I don't give maaser, Esav will come to provoke me. And Esav, of course, is the Samech Mem, the Yetzer Hara, the Satan. But dafka when I don't give maaser, that's when I arouse Esav to come and provoke me. Why dafka this sin and not many other sins? Okay, this is the question that he presents. Now let's explain it very quickly. And the reason why we want to pay attention is because we all make money. Even if you make a little bit of money, it doesn't matter how much money you make. That 10% is not yours. It belongs to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. You have to give it over. And then we're not going to get into right now to the halacha of when you have to give, how much, and the calculations. I mean, there's a lot of calculations. You have to calculate your expenses before. Some people, they give maaser from any money they get. They get money in a wedding, they give 10% from that. They get tax returns, they give 10% from that. But either way, let's now go for the reason why Esav will be provoked. Then if we have time, we'll explain more. We have to understand, if you remember, I know it's far away, it was in Sefer Bereshit, but we learned that Esav used to cheat. He used to con his father with the mitzvah of maaser. He used to pretend that he is observant, and he would come to his father and ask him questions specifically about maaser. And where do we know that? K'mo sheperesh Rashi. Rashi explained on the verse, Esav was a ish yodeh tzayid. He was a hunter, not necessarily a hunter with a spear. Rather, he used to know how to hunt with his mouth. Meaning a fraudster. Some people, they know how to fool you with their mouth. they fraud you with their mouth. So this is what Esav used to do. Like a con artist. No, like a con artist. They come and some people, they know how to sweet talk and tell you a story, and they make you cry with their stories, and they somehow get money out of you. Nevertheless, so Esav was like that. That's what Rashi says. It wasn't necessarily there was a hunter in the field. He was also a hunter in the field. He was a murderer. But nevertheless, he was also a con artist. How do we know that? Shaya shoelo ketzad me'asrim hateven, ketzad me'asrim hamelach. Esav used to come to Yaakov and ask him, how do I give maaser on straw? You don't have to give maaser on straw. It doesn't say anywhere. That's where he used to pretend to Esav. Esav used to pretend to Yaakov, he's so righteous. He comes and says, listen, I have a lot of straw. How do I give maaser on the straw? Well, you don't have to give maaser. How about salt? Do I have to give maaser on salt? No, you don't have to give maaser on salt. Nevertheless, he used to con him with his mouth. Vegam al ze kashe. Now comes another question with Esav. Lama dafka amer emet aviv b'mitzvah azot? Why would Esav con his father on this mitzvah? Why didn't he con him on other mitzvot? Specifically, that's where he used to con his father. וצריך לומר שהמתנה יותר גדולה שהבטיח הקדוש ברוך הוא אברהם אבינו היה לתת לבניו ולזרעו ארץ ישראל. What is the real present that Avraham Avinu was promised by Hashem? Hashem didn't promise Avraham Avinu millions of dollars. You know what he promised him? That he's going to give his offsprings the land of Israel. That was the promise. Other people get promises, I'll give you money, I'll give you diamonds, I'll give you fame. Avraham Avinu says, I don't need all this junk. I want something serious. Hashem says, you want? You know what? I'm going to give you, your offsprings the land of Israel. Ooh, that's a present. Kedichtiv, as it says in the book of Bereshit, chapter 12, Vayiven sham mizbeach l'Hashem al besurat Eretz Yisrael. The second that Avraham Avinu heard that he's going to get the land of Israel, you know, in our days you open a bottle of a champagne, Avraham Avinu built an altar. You get good news today, right away you put it on the WhatsApp group and you open a champagne bottle. Avraham Avinu built an altar and right away he gave some sacrifices. Why? Because he got the message that he's going to inherit the land of Israel. How dear and special is the land of Israel to the eyes of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's like the cream of the crop, the jewel of all jewels is the land of Israel. We spoke about it in Parashat Shlach, that the Kadosh Baruch Hu never forgave us for the sin of the spies. How dare you talk about my land, Lashon Hara. So the Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, is literally the how do you say, the eyeball, when something is very, very dear, how do you call it? The apple of the eye. Sorry, yes, that's how you say it. Nevertheless, so Avraham Avinu was extremely happy with the news, so he made an altar and brought some sacrifices. והנה, אז באותו הזמן היה מוחזק בכנענים. But at the time when Avraham Avinu got the news, the land was occupied by the nation of the Knaanim, the Canaanites. As it says in the verse, והכנעני אז בארץ, it says a verse, we know that from the verse, והקדוש ברוך הוא הבטיח להוציאו משם, and Hashem says, don't worry, I'll take the Canaanites out. And Rashi explains on that, עתיד אני להחזירה לבניו. Rashi says, in the future, I will take them out. Right now, it's occupied. Kind of like we have now a bunch of Dobermans on the Temple Mount. There's a reason why they're there. It's not that the Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't know what he's doing. There's a reason why there's, I call it Dobermans, because you go up there, they start biting you. I'm talking about, of course, the Arabs that are sitting on Temple Mount. So there's a reason. We're not allowed to go there right now. So even L'Halacha, all the Gdolim, all the Gdolei Ador, all the great rabbis says, you're not allowed to go up there right now. So the Kadosh Baruch Hu put some Rottweilers and Dobermans there, that the second you go in, they'll bite your tuchas there. It's the same thing here. The Kadosh Baruch Hu had the Canaanites in the land of Israel, and he says, yeah, it's not yours right now. When it's going to be the time, I will take them out. Okay, now let's continue. Seemingly, נראה שישראל גזלו הארץ מהכנענים. Seemingly, it seems like the nation of Israel, when they went into Eretz Israel, later on with Yoshua, that they took, or they stole, or they took over the land of Israel from the Canaanites. It looks like it, right? That they went in and they stole the land. That's what it seems. But nevertheless, it says, sorry about that. It says, Rashi says, on the verse in the book of Bereshit, the first verse in the Torah, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, Rashi says on this verse, if any nation will ever come and say, you are thieves, im yomru ha'umot listim atem, the nations will come to the nation of Israel and says, you are thieves. Why? Shekavashtem artzot shivat hagoyim. You have conquered the land of the 7 nations. I mean, up until today, some people do that. They come and tell us that we are occupying the land, that we are whatever they're saying about us. Now, even Rashi said that when the nations are going to come and say that you are thieves because you stole the land, you meaning the Jews, then what would be the answer? Kol haaretz shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What are you talking about? The whole planet belongs to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Especially the land of Israel. It belongs to Hashem. It doesn't belong to anybody. Not the Canaanites, not the Palestinians, and not anybody else. It belongs to Hashem. It doesn't even belong to us. Hashem gave it to us, but nevertheless, the owner of the land is the master of the universe. Hu bera'ah, Kadosh Baruch Hu created the land, v'natna l'asher yashar beinav, and He will give it to whoever He wants to. So He gave it to other people enough. We didn't occupy the land for 1950 years. Sorry, for a little bit less, for about 1870 years. We didn't occupy the land. It wasn't ours. But nevertheless, the Kadosh Baruch Hu created the land. He decided who's going to get this land. ולכן כדי להראות לעולם שהקדוש ברוך הוא אדון על הארץ, and now we have to show the entire world that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is the master of the entire world. ציווה לנו מצוות המעשרות לאחר שנכנסו לארץ ישראל. הקדוש ברוך הוא says, listen, I am the owner. I am letting you go into the land of Israel. But in order to show everybody that I'm the owner, or to use a term that is more familiar to us, I am the landlord, then you have to give me rent. You have to give me 10%. So right when we went into the land of Israel, the Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us the commandment that we have to give maaser. Telling us, in other words, I am the landlord. You pay me. Right? That's what the Kadosh Baruch Hu did. שהמעשרות הם כמו המס שנותנים למלך. That the maaser is like tax that you have to give the king. You're living in my land, I'm taxing you 10%. Very simple. נמצא, what do we learn from it? שמי שרוצה לזכות במתנת הארץ, if you want to merit, to have the זכות, to gain the land of ארץ ישראל, שיודע שהארץ של הקדוש ברוך הוא. Then you have to admit that the land belongs to Hashem. This we have to tell now maybe Bibi and the rest of the clan there. You want to have possession over the land? Then come and say the land belongs to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Don't say the land belongs to the Jews. The land belongs to Hashem. Now we are tenants here, so we have to pay 10% from the land. But nevertheless, I'll say it again. This is very applicable. נמצא שמי שרוצה לזכות במתנת הארץ, whoever wants to earn, to get the land of Israel as a present, צריך שיודע שהארץ היא של הקדוש ברוך הוא. You have to admit, the land belongs to Hashem. It doesn't belong to anybody else. וצריך נאמין, also you have to, שיתחייב עצמו להוציא המעשר. Now you have to give מעשר. If you say the land belongs to Hashem, then give מעשר. Now first of all, we have to give maaser in the land of Israel from the actual crops. That's another thing that we have to do. Now this is not that right now Mashiach is not here yet, so it's not Doraita. Midirabanan, we have to give 10% of the crops. If you're not doing that, just that you know, we spoke about it a couple times. Eating fruits and vegetables that were grown in the land of Israel that were not given maaser on is worse than eating pig or shrimps or anything else that crawls on the land. In regards to kashrut, the uncleanliness, the unkosherness of fruit and vegetables that were not given maaser is worse than eating.
You didn't give away 10% of it.
Exactly, if you didn't do maaser, yeah.
Okay.
So you have to be very careful. Excuse me?
Like I had something that somebody gave me on Friday, like a fig from his tree, and then I didn't feel good after.
Then you have to, any fruit and vegetables that were grown in the land of Israel, we have to give maaser on them. You have to know how to do it.
I should ask.
Yeah. Now even here when you go to the regular supermarkets, the majority of them, then they do buy crops that were already given maaser. You're kind of safe. But nevertheless, you go here on Wednesday to the market, and you have a lot of vendors, they're coming in with their fruit. So a lot of them are Arabs, so you don't have a problem. But I'll tell you what the problem is, that a lot of the Arabs, they're not the farmers, they're agents. They buy it, and then they sell it. So the best is to give maaser on everything. So you lose half a tomato. But nevertheless, you have to know how to do it, when to do it. When you're not too sure, then you have to say, do it without a bracha. But nevertheless, not to sidetrack, the maaser, right now, we still have to give 10% of the crops. We have to know what of. If you eat it off the tree, there's no problem. But what happens if you pull it off the tree and you walk with it? We're not going to do a class now about maaser. But nevertheless, we are obligated in Israel. Whatever comes out of Israel, you're not obligated, of course, in the diaspora. You don't have to give maaser on anything. But nevertheless, just to stay on the topic, is that once you declare the land belongs to Hashem, okay, so now give your taxes on the land of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and that's the 10%. Ve'esav, shaya rotze lizkot b'matnat haaretz. Now what Esav? Esav wanted to win the land, because Yitzchak got the blessing for the land. Esav says, I don't care about the money, I want the land. Everybody wanted the land. Do you think only now they're fighting about the land? Also 4,000 years ago they were fighting about the land. So Esav wanted the land too. Esav shaya rotze lizkot b'matnat haaretz. He wanted to gain the merit of the present of getting the land. והיה רוצה שאביו יפריש לחלקו זאת הארץ. So he wanted to convince somehow Yaakov to give him a portion of the land. היה מרמה את אביו במצוות מעשר. That's why he used to call him specifically with the mitzvah of מעשר, because he wanted to get through to the heart of Yaakov, so Yaakov will give him a portion in the land. This is one thing that people don't understand, what we have here. We are sitting here on prime real estate, and people don't understand about what's the big deal about the land of Israel. So for thousands of years, people were fighting to get piece of this land. But nevertheless, so Esav knew that Yitzchak getting a piece of the land, so he was calling his father, maybe he can get a part of the land. והנה שבירך יצחק את יעקב, when Yitzchak gave the bracha to Yaakov, sorry, I kept saying Yaakov before, I'm talking about Yitzchak when he was giving the bracha. I correct myself, I kept saying Yaakov. So when Yitzchak was giving the blessing to Yaakov, נתן לחלקו מתנת הארץ. Yitzchak was giving the blessing to Yaakov that he would give him a portion of the land. כמו שפרש הרמב"ן, as the Ramban explains on that verse, in Bereshit, וילך אל ארץ ישראל, and so forth, that he went to the land of Israel. But nevertheless, just to conclude, Esav wanted a part of the land. So he used to con his father Yitzchak. I kept saying Yaakov, by the way, so I just correct myself. Esav used to con his father Yitzchak to give him a part of the land because he wanted a piece of it. That's why he conned him specifically with the mitzvah of maaser. וזהו שאמר לו ויתן לך אלוהים מטל השמיים ומשמני הארץ. This is what it says in the verse, that Hashem will give you from the dews of the heavens and the fatness of the earth, and not only that, from the abundance of the grain and the wine. This is a famous blessing that Yaakov got. We read that very often. But when it says that Hashem will give him from the heavens dew, but mainly from the fatness of the land, כלומר, כל שפע הארץ יבוא מן הקדוש ברוך הוא. What does that mean? Not that the land here, a lot of people say, what are you talking about? It seems like he gave the Arabs the fatness of the land, the oil. You know, we don't have oil here. Look at all the neighbors around us, they're swimming in oil. So this is not what the verse means, because it sounds like mishamnei haaretz. So people hear it as shemen. Shemen is oil. This is not what the blessing is. Shamnei means the fatness of the land, the abundance, the bracha. Look at it here. You come to the land of Israel. For thousands of years, it was a desert. There was nothing here. We came here 70 years ago. Look what's going on. The Jew just touches the land here and activates what's going on in the land. And this is where you see the blessing of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. What does it mean? Klomar, kol shefa haaretz, the abundance that will come from this land, akol min HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It only comes from Hashem. You know how many people, kings, rulers, armies, empires came to the land of Israel, nothing worked. Like putting the key in and nothing opens. What's going on with this land? When we come to this land, the Kadosh Baruch Hu turns the switch on, whoop, and you see that the blessing comes from Hashem. ומשום אחי, and therefore, אתה מחויב לעשר. Then you are obligated to give מעשר. ואם לא תעשר, and if you would not give מעשר, לא יהיה לך. You're not going to have anything. If you give, this is the key for the abundance. Then you get everything. You don't give, לא יהיה לך. Very simple. You're not going to have. וחיוב המעשרות, and the obligation of מעשרות, אינו אלא בארץ ישראל. It's only in the land of Israel. You go 1 centimeter out of Eretz Israel, that's it. No more מעשרות. The obligation is only in the land of Israel. But, Esav said, ומשם הארץ יהיה מושבך. Esav says, from the fatness, from the abundance of the land, that's where you're going to be dwelling. שיהיה מושב טוב, that Esav also got a good place. לא יהיה השומן בפירות, but the goodness that he gets, so he got a lot of oil. That's it. But he didn't get the goodness, like the fatness, what is called hashuman bapirot, the goodness of the fruit of the land of Israel. So so it seems like the nation that came out of Esav, they got a lot of good, but this is not the real goodness that's coming from the land of Israel. Inami, also, the moshavcha, when it's talking about the place of your dwelling, רצה לומר שעד שישב הוא שם יהיה חלקו טוב. Saying, in other words, that till you will sit there, then your portion will be good. אבל אחר כך יחלה ויאבד. While you're sitting now, this is going on the nations of the world. Now, when we're still in exile, okay, wherever you're going to be, you'll be good. You'll be doing good. You'll have an abundance. But at the right moment, especially when Mashiach comes, אבל אחר כך, after that, יחלה ויאבד. You lose everything. That's where you see now another sign that Mashiach is coming, that all the nations are losing all their wealth. All the rich people are even losing their wealth. Maybe they still have money. Now I just read about somebody, who was it? Not Warren Buffett. One of the richest men in the world, that for many years he was holding his title in the first 10. Now he went down in the first 100, whatever. He's number 40 now. So he's still worth millions of dollars, but not what he used to. So you see that now everybody's losing their wealth. כמו שפירש שם הרב הנ"ל, as it says there before what we read, ומטעם זה, and for that reason, אם יעקב ובניו לא יפרישו מעשרות, if the Yaakov and his sons will not give מעשרות, אם כן אינם מודים שהארץ היא של הקדוש ברוך הוא. Saying, in other words, if we don't give maaser, what are we saying in other words? That we don't admit and agree that the land belongs to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And if this is the case, ומתנת הארץ חוזרת והם נקראו גזלנים. So the present of getting the land goes back, and then we're called thieves. So if we're not giving maaser, I'm saying we, the nation of Israel, then we don't get the land of Israel as a present, and then we're calling right now whoever's occupying the land of Israel and not giving maaserot can be called a gazlan, a thief. Gazlan is not really a thief. The right translation to gazlan, I tried looking it up. When some translations will say gazlan is a robber, but a more precise word, you will help me pronounce it, is scoundrel. Scoundrel. That's a gazlan. Somebody comes and steals, but in a tricky and not like a con artist way. That's a gazlan. And I mean, up until today, we have avera that is called gezel, which is a very severe sin. But nevertheless, we are obligated in giving maaser, and if I don't give maaser, I'm basically saying, in other words, the Kadosh Baruch Hu is not the landlord, he's not the owner of the land, and now I'm occupying the land, and I'm a thief. I'm taking the land without paying my dues and my taxes. והטעם שעשיו עבד הברכות. Now, how come Esav lost the brachot? היינו, משום דכתיב, it says in the book of Mishlei, in Proverbs, איש אמונות, רב ברכות. That's what it says. A man, a trustworthy man, will have many blessings. But he who hastens to become rich will not go unpunished. That's what it says in the book of Mishlei in Proverbs, chapter 28, verse 20.
28.
Chapter 28, verse 20. And the verse, I'll say it again, a trustworthy man will have many blessings. If a person is trustworthy, in the eyes of Hashem, of course, then he will have many blessings. Hashem will bless him in many things. But he who hastens to become rich will not go unpunished. And it's not that it says that it's bad to be rich, but when you hasten to become rich, meaning you're doing not legal things, if you're doing it the right way, the money will come when Hashem wants it to come. But if you are hasten to be rich, meaning you're doing illegal things, or you're stealing, you're robbing, then very fast a person will be punished by the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that verse is talking about Esav. He didn't want the money when it's supposed to come, I want the money now. And when you want the money now, you're not waiting, then you go unpunished. You're not going to go unpunished. So when it says, why was the reason that Esav was punished? Because of that. She'alach Esav hasadeh, Esav went to the field, as it says in the book of Bereshit, chapter 27, verse Hey, Latzud Tzayid. He went to the field to hunt. Le'avi, and he went to not to hunt deer. He went to the field and he wanted to get something to con. Upirshu Razal, and our sages explain in the Midrash, she'alach b'machshava, she'im lo imtza min ha'efker yavi min ha'gezel. When Yitzchak told him, go get me a good meal, then he went out to the field and he says, if I will find a good catch, I will hunt it. But if not, I'll go to the neighbors and I'll rob them. And that's what he did, by the way. So he says, I can't find a good catch. Oh, the neighbor, they have some nice lamb. I'll go and steal it. So he already went with the thought, if I can make it, I'll make it. If not, I'll rob it. Ve'oleh, and we understand from that, lo matzlachat, he wasn't successful. He couldn't find the right prayer, that's how I said, to hunt. Umishum hachi avad habrachot. Since he went and he stole the food that he brought to his father, was gezel. He stole it. If you remember, there's a famous story with the shepherds of Avraham Avinu and the shepherds of Lot. And they had an argument. Now when we read it in the Torah, we think that a shepherd that was holding like a stick, a staff, was arguing with another shepherd. I like to see it, I always like to imagine how things look. It's kind of like, the mafia bumping shoulders. I'll tell you a quick story and then we'll finish. When I went out of the army, I was a little bit like Esav. I wanted to get rich quick. I was, hastened to be rich. I was wheeling and dealing. I was able to sell air to dead people. And I wanted to make money and fast. So I thought of what can I make money with? Anyways, I had all these ideas and I made a lot of money, don't get me wrong. So I was 21 years old. I decided I'm going to sell flowers. I used to go Thursday morning to a big plant, bought a lot of flowers, like in bundles, and I used to make bouquets. And then I had a lot of buckets, and I would go to a very busy intersection, and I would stand there with the buckets, and they would go like hotcakes Friday morning. And I made thousands of shekels. And all it took, Thursday, I had a few workers. I brought, everything was in huge bundles. I had a lot of tables like that, spread them all, and make quickly nice bouquets. Put them in, that paper, cellophane paper. I was like a machine, and I had dozens of flower bouquets stand on the intersection, and people will stop, and I would sell them. I would make, I'm talking about 25 years ago, I would make on an average weekend 5,000, 7,000, 10,000 shekels. Talking about 25 years ago. And then of course I expanded, so once I would stand on this side of the street, then I had another one standing on the other side of the street, so forth. Anyways, I made a lot of money. One day I'm standing in and that's, by the way, 2 days of work. Thursday doing the flowers, Friday selling them. One time I'm standing, our car stops, two guys, big guys go out, sunglasses, looking around. What is this? I tell them, these are for 35, these are for 45. Take 2 of them, I'll give you a good deal. So one of them kicks the bucket falls over, and he tells me, in other words, either you get out of here or you pay us a piece. Now I was what's called a smart tuchis, and I start arguing. And needless to say, the mafia came to me and told me, in other words, this is our territory. If you want to sell here, you have to give us money. And I started arguing with them till my friend told me, what are you talking about? You're going to either get a bouquet in your mouth or a bullet in your head. Anyway, so the mafia came to ask for protection, for territory. And the joke was that I came and told him, oh, here, I have a license. I have a local license. I got a license from the municipality to sell. Anyways, so the mafia came to pay a visit. So why am I telling you this story? Because sometimes you see in the movies or in real life, the mafia, they fight with each other. You're in my territory. And they starts a fight, and it can be violent and murder, guns, whatever. So we're reading about the story about the shepherds of Avraham and Lot, and they were fighting. So the commentary says that the shepherds of Avraham Avinu were righteous, and they kept telling the shepherds of Lot, you letting your sheep go in lands that doesn't belong to you. This is gezel. You're not allowed to take your sheep and put it on somebody else's land to eat the crops. This is mamash gezel. This is stealing and robbery. So started a fight between them. That the shepherds of Lot used to fight with the shepherds of Avraham Avinu. I imagine it, it's not like 2 old shepherds arguing. It was more like 2 gangs. The gang of Avraham Avinu were the righteous ones saying, listen, this is not legal. You're not allowed to put your sheep on this land. And they're coming back and saying, it's my territory, move your sheep. That's how I'm imagining it in my mind. But nevertheless, going back to what we were saying, Esav was a crook. Yitzchak tells him, get me some good meat. So he says, if I'm not going to be able to find it myself, I'll go and steal it. Just yesterday, somebody sent me a video. I told you that they're exposing now all these scandals with kosher meats. You have to be so careful here, especially in Israel, that they, a few months ago they caught 50 ton of meat coming in from Gaza, all with kosher stamps. Now I don't know where is the kosher slaughterhouse in Gaza exactly, and who are the mashgichim there, but they caught 50 tons. You know how many trucks with kosher, with meat that has stamps on it that it's kosher, going to all the restaurants that people eat from. Now they found another shipment of horse meat that came in from Gaza also with all the stamps. Somebody sent me a video now. This is a lot of problems. So this is Esav. If I can't give you the kosher meat, in the video that somebody sent me is hidden cameras in a factory. Now what they do is they slaughter the animals, and then some of them become taref. So they throw them to the other side. So they have the pile of the taref, the unkosher animals, and the pile of the kosher one. And you see in the video how they all get mixed up, and they all get to the same pile. So half of them are kosher, half of them are not kosher, a whole big mishmash. So same thing here. Esav says, if I can find a kosher one, I'll give him a kosher. I can't. I'll steal it from the neighbor. I don't care. That's why Esav lost the brachot. The reason why Esav lost his blessing, mishum, because he wanted a get rich quick scam. Right away, give me quick. I don't want to invest anything here. And he went with his thought, if I find something kosher, good. If not, I will steal. I will take from the gezel, I will steal, no problem. And needless to say that he wasn't successful. Therefore he lost the brachot. And when the nation of Israel, the Jews, don't give maaser, גם הם נקראו גזלנים. Then we're like Esav, we're thieves, we steal. ועשו הנקרא איש שדה. In the beginning I told you that in this specific mitzvah, if we don't do, who comes to provoke you? Esav. Since Esav was called the man of the field, then Esav is the power. Esav is the minister of Esav, is the Samech Mem, is the Satan, and he comes to provoke us. As it says, V'haya ka'asher tarid. When you behave like Esav, then that's what you get back. So saying in other words, you want a bracha in your parnasa is you give maaser. I'm not talking right now the maaser in the land of Israel when you give the 10% of the crops. That's a given. If you're living in the land of Israel, you have to be very particular and cautious with the fruit and the vegetables that you eat. If there was given maaser from that or not, then you got to learn all the laws to know what to do. But when it comes to a bracha in parnasa, and there's all over the world, not only in the land of Israel, then you have to make sure that you're giving the 10% of what you make. And there's a way to calculate it. You have to give it after your expenses, not before expenses. But nevertheless, when you give that, that's when you get the blessing. And here we have to learn another thing from that is in regards to the land of Israel. We have to understand the land of Israel belongs to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. He gives it to whoever he wants to, and he chose to give it to us. We have to scream out loud to the world is that the master of the universe, he's the master of this land. And in this land, then we're taxed. So we give a tax to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. We have to make sure that the nations of the world, they understand that we also say, no, the land of Israel belongs to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And he's the master of the universe. He's the landlord. He's the one who owns the land, and he decided to give it to us. So we have to make sure that we are thanking the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and the way of thanking the Kadosh Baruch Hu is with giving the maaser. But we started with the bracha in parnasa. Everybody needs bracha in parnasa. And you want to make sure that you are giving 10% tax to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. I know you also give tax to the IRS, but you have to give tax to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's the important tax. And this is really the source of all the brachot. And we see with Esav, the second that he wanted to be tricky or to do something in a stealing way, then right away he lost all his brachot. So we learn from that in parnasa, you can't be crooked. You can't look for loopholes or to bend corners in parnasa. Here I don't have to say this, and here I don't have to be so honest. Here I can round corners. Once you start rounding corners, or you're doing gezel, you're doing robbery and stealing, there's not going to be any bracha in the parnasa, and the person chas v'shalom loses everything. You want 100% bracha in the parnasa is when you are 100% honest, and you give your part to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem will bless you bakol mikol kol with great wealth, and ultimately we want to be blessed with getting our portion in our land. V'ten chalkenu b'toratecha. B'ezrat Hashem very soon with the coming of Mashiach. Beautiful rest of the week.